and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. My name is Serge. Joining me today, I've got a Nelly.
Hey, I'm here.
I got a Wheeler.
Dusk.
Today on tech, we got a James.
Boo.
And a reminder that everything we do is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon, patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part 2 of our Duskmourn House of Horror set review. Today we're going to be covering red, green, gold, and land.
Was that a like I'm a ghost boo, or were you just booing Serge?
No, sorry, that was a very bad ghost boo. Not a like
Boast goo.
Boast goo has been called.
Yeah, I bet you boast goo, dude.
sorry.
Dang.
Boo.
Oh, I'm scared.
Did we thank the Patreon already?
Yes, we did.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. No, you derailed us, my man.
I know,
Oh my God, I'm scared.
I was cruising.
I know I did.
Oh my God, I'm scared. Did we get our money?
Yeah.
The boo got me.
A reminder that these set reviews are not exhaustive. We do not talk about every single card, only the ones that we think are relevant to the format or that we think you're going to want us to talk about. We are including a couple of the Commander product cards, and I'm going to snag the first card today because it's a Serge card. It's a chainsaw. This is a 2-mana artifact for 1 and a red. When it enters, deal 3 damage to up to 1 target creature. Whenever one or more creatures die, put a rev counter on the chainsaw. And equipped creature gets plus X+0, where X is the number of rev counters on the chainsaw. Now, it's 2 to cast, 3 to equip, which is basically swords mana, and we don't play swords anymore. But we now have a tutorable counterspell off of Stoneforge Mystic, which you can flash in at instant speed off of its activated ability.
Did you say counterspell?
Calling this a counterspell is a bit of a
meant
stretch.
Tutorable.
You meant
not
a spell
counterable.
that puts counters on it.
Well, sorry.
It's a strangle, right?
You can tutor it off of Stoneforge Mystic.
Yes.
And then flash into play off of Stoneforge Mystic, which I think is very cool. And other than Mortipod, I can't really think of anything else that kind of fits this.
There's one from Assassin's Creed that is just straight up destroy target creature.
Oh, I don't really know the Assassin's Creed set. I'm going to be honest. I haven't really looked at those cards.
I bet that costs more than 2 mana to cast.
It does
normally,
cost
though.
more than 2 mana to cast.
Yeah. So I like that. I like this. In the red-white equipment decks, we're also getting more effects that let you equip for free. So you can kind of get around it if you're playing sort of the giant hammer and that version of the deck as well. Give this a try. Have fun with it. I know I'm going to. I don't think it's a game changer, but it's an extra tool to add in your toolbox.
Kind of reminds me of Oath of Chandra.
Kind of reminds me of
It's not a...
what was the 5-mana vehicle that came into play and used to dome people as well?
Oh, big boat?
Yeah. I don't remember what it was actually
Sky
called.
Sovereign.
Sky Sovereign. This gives me like bite-sized Sky Sovereign vibes, you know?
BC Ferries.
Boo,
The
boo.
boat.
Yeah.
All right, Wheeler, you're up. Oh, I like this card too. You're
Too
fine.
bad. You screwed up the order. Fear of missing out. 1 and a red for a 2/3 enchantment creature that happens to be a nightmare. When Fear of Missing Out enters, discard a card, then draw a card. And it has Delirium. Whenever Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Couple of things going on here. Well, I was going to praise it being a 2-mana 2/3, but I think that's just boomer brain kicking.
Yeah. No, I did it too. I got to the bottom like, 3 toughness.
I mean, being a 2-drop that has a technically above curve body is pretty good for red. It's good for most things, but red will take it, even if it is on the defensive side. Being able to rummage away additional lands, which is something that aggressive red decks can run into, is nice. And this Delirium is kind of just busted. Like, the fact that you get to make an additional combat phase with this card, albeit probably only untapping like 1 creature to attack, but being able to say untap like a Goblin Rabblemaster to get an additional combat, or Broadside Bombardiers, or Legion Warboss, or another 3-mana Goblin rare is pretty good. The mono red tends to hit Delirium pretty quickly, as well. You just have like random Seal of Fires and
Your
Tar
Bomat
Fire,
Courier died.
Bomat Courier.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The one downside is that what are we cutting for this? Which is always the big question with red, because mono red is, one of the most streamlined archetypes in the format, and the floor of this card when you don't have Delirium kind of stinks. Like the discard is kind of nice with certain like Inti synergies or whatever.
That's what I was thinking.
But outside of that, I'm not too certain this card's going to see much play. Like maybe there's like a Rakdos mid-range kind of deck that takes advantage of the discard synergies. And this card can show up in that because hitting Delirium in that kind of deck is pretty good for your Unholy Heats and your Dragon's Rage Channeler. But aside from that, this has the potential to be very good. But when it isn't doing that, you're not super excited. And that kind of spits into the face of the consistency of mono red.
It's hard to cut a haste 2-drop for this.
Yeah.
But
like what are we cutting?
well, like that's just it. I feel like you have to be willing to fit this into your deck. You have to be willing to cut like Feldon if you're on that, or Robber the Rich. Like I think this is trying to fight Robber the Rich. I know. Brother, ew. Yeah. But like honestly, that's just where, the red deck wins deck is at now. I do want to mention before I move on that because of the templating, this is a really hot top deck because you don't have to discard the card if you have no cards in hand. You still get to draw a card.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
That's cool, but it's still not Robber the Rich, right?
All right, Nelly.
Let's talk about Gleeful Arsonist. 2 in a red for a 1/2 human wizard with whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Gleeful Arsonist deals damage equal to its power to that player. And Undying, which as a reminder says when this creature dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So pretty cool. I don't know who's the first one of these, Gutter Snipe or something. It's like these kind of creatures get played a bunch in. It's sort of like a section of the mono red red deck wins decks that are playing them, where you have a series of archers and thermo alchemists and whatnot. And this one's 3 mana.
Well, this is the opposite. This is a Punisher mechanic, not a spells matter for you kind of.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
whenever
yeah.
an opponent casts a
Yeah.
non-creature spell. Oh, thank you. Okay. I thought this was just another one in the line of when you cast a non-creature spell or an instant sorcery.
No, you
hit them.
see, because this is from the Commander product, so you need it to make everybody else miserable before playing the game.
So, yeah. Okay. So it's a taxing red card that deals some amount of damage to your opponent. It has Undying. I don't know where we're playing this. I don't know where.
So
what
I
deck
have
this
been
gets
thinking about
into.
this because there's
My
this
bad.
card and
I read it
there's,
wrong.
I believe there's another card we're going to be talking about later that are, I think red, white D&T or red, white punish might be a thing. And the card you're not playing, but the way my brain always goes is Zozu the Punisher, which is probably not the right card to mention in that one. But they're starting to get a density of red punish mechanics cards like this. I'm trying to think of, there's the 2 mana 2/2 that whenever they try and cast or
Dolan of the Great Revel.
right, Eidolon is up there. There's whenever they cast something out of their graveyard, it hits them.
Ash Zealot.
Ash Zealot, right? Like if you combine this plus the disruption of like white mixed in with some burns, the issue is I don't know if it's better than just straight burn,
No.
but it makes you think, right? And that's where my brain goes, and I'm not quite sure. The other possible option is synergizing with like Gev that we had in the last set. These ones where if your
Pumping
opponent
power,
has taken
yeah.
damage, you get an upside. I don't quite know because you're counting on them doing something on your turn in order to enable that particular mechanic. But it's neat. You're right, though. It is pretty niche. It is pretty narrow.
I think the closest analog is going to be Maddening Hex. Another 3 mana card that red plays that punishes opponents for casting non-creature spells specifically, that does currently see play in most versions of red deck wins, or even like medium red or red green monsters or some absolute sicko blue red prowess builds. But Maddening Hex can deal 1 to 6 damage,
Yeah.
and enchantments are kind of awkward. Like Undying means that like if you kill this, you get it back and it hits you for harder, and that's kind of neat. But what if they just didn't kill it in the first place?
Yeah.
What if they just like really struggled to do anything because the damage from Maddening Hex is going to ramp up a lot faster than Gleeful Arsonist? Like a good roll on Maddening Hex just kills them like immediately. It just stops them from being able to do anything.
Yeah.
This card you can kind of like play into a la Eidolon of the Great Rebel.
Yeah, or just swords it, take 1 damage.
Yeah, you
once.
don't immediately see a home for this. Like, there's not like Boros Humans isn't like itching for something like this, is it?
No.
The Undying is kind of the coolest thing about it. It is a
Yeah.
3-mana human with Undying.
Or you want to throw like a Rancor on it or something, and then like make it both a kill threat and
Deuce.
yeah.
I mean, I like the play pattern of like you are the giant growths version of mono red, right? Like, because there's like 3 or 4. Like sometimes they play all of those, right? The 1-mana pump spells, and then you go into combat with this. They kill your other thing, and you're like, that's chill. But with this trigger on the stack, I'm making a 4/4.
I mean, yeah,
you know?
attack with this. They go to bolt it. You're like, okay, well, in response, giant growth.
Yeah.
And then they take 4, and then their bolt doesn't kill it. It's kind of hot.
Yeah, they take like 10 off
Yeah.
of just your giant growth.
it
right?
does have ancient 2 mana. It's pretty cute. It's probably not.
Actually, you know what? I'm coming around on this card. I think I like it in mono red. I think I like it in the mono red versions that play more pump spells.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I think that play pattern is enough to be like, yeah, this card's going to be like like it's just
Like, they're just still gonna swords it, but
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
They're going to swords my broadside bombardiers.
yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, just like any chip damage that you can find, especially as like shock your creature attack with my thing gets a little bit worse as creatures get bigger, is pretty relevant. Like just finding spaces to get in chip damage is really important for red.
Next up, we have the Irreverent Gremlin. This is a 2 mana 2/2 Gremlin for 1 and a red.
Me 30 minutes after the podcast.
It has menace, and whenever another creature you controlled power 2 or less enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card, but do this only once each turn. I mean, sort of like we mentioned before with Fear of Missing Out, this is a card that is kind of exciting with Inti or some type of red-black Delirium card. This is a role player. This isn't going to open up anything new. The fact you can only do it once each turn is honestly probably fine, so it's not super busted, so you're not looping anything, but it's neat.
I'd like to see Rakdos like Madness.
Yeah.
I might bring that to a showdown because that's a thing that has been getting cards every single set, and now the cards are actually good.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know, you're not like, check out my Madness card. It's now Terminate. And it's like, well, why didn't you play Terminate? They're like, well, because it doesn't have Madness on it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I think the best part about this card, this is very
art.
This is very Victoria specific, but yeah, that's Nelly with a Hernandez burrito and the key to YJ.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
does
Yeah,
just look like
we
a
can
burrito,
money drag
doesn't it?
after
Yeah.
I'm done.
yeah.
Holy crap. Amazing. All right, Wheeler, you're up.
Norin, Swift Survivalist. 1 red for a 2/1 legendary creature, Human Coward. Norin, Swift Survivalist, can't block. And whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. You may play that card from exile this turn. I like this magic card. I like trying it out in a more aggressive version of Mono Red. That's a deck where a 1 mana 2 power creature like a Elite Vanguard or Savannah Lions is still pretty relevant to have. Like you just want to really like you want your turns to be like turn 1 1 drop, turn 2 2 1 drops, and then you're like, oh, I'm dead.
Are people still playing like Jackal Pup or the one with fire breathing?
Some of them, Fire Trigger Satyr occasionally sees play. Jackal Pup does not, except for Trenton was on like Tattermunge Maniac, and I was just like, dude, this is the worst card. I mean, this was like months ago now, so I'm just roasting Trenton for no reason.
Hell yeah.
I hate Tattermunge Maniac,
Get
and
burned,
I'll
Trenton.
use any opportunity to talk about how crap that card is.
That's to attack.
But Mono Red is a deck where you're like, well, I'm going to send everything.
Yeah.
And then even though you might lose a creature out of, this combat step, and Norin kind of says like, well, if they block, I'll just exile it and recast it because it's like a 1 mana creature or whatever. Some spots that might be a little awkward, like resetting the power on your hired claw, or, maybe you don't want to recast your creature or whatever.
Well, it is a May. It's completely optional.
Yeah,
you can let it
exactly.
die. You can whatever. It
Yeah.
gives you that flexibility.
Shout outs to R&D for getting the vibe of cowardice across without creating a card that's sort of weirdly useless in most situations and then also powers up one of the like core EDH decks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I feel like the first Norrin card was trying to communicate like, okay, well this person is supposed to go and fight,
Yeah.
but they won't.
They won't.
You know, they can't. And like this card, I feel like kind of communicates that more elegantly. I don't know.
Yeah, they just want out. How'd you even get there, Norrin?
Yeah. Why are you
Why are
there,
you
Norrin?
Why are you there?
It's like, where's Norrin, the book? Yeah.
All right, Nelly, you're up.
Let's talk about Razorkin Needlehead. Red for a 2/2 human assassin with Razorkin Needlehead has first strike during your turn. And whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead deals 1 damage to them. That's right. Everybody's Sheoldred now. Yay!
Goodbye, Wheeler. This is what I was talking about as the other card specifically for like this red D&T, this red punish mechanic.
Yeah, red Sheoldred into the red Taxes deck and every other red deck.
But yeah, you're right. This was just good enough for every other red deck. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, red, I think is a good number of red pips to include for this card if it's going to cost 2 mana.
Yeah, I'll
Both
give,
of them being
tell you
red.
what. Hey, I'll give him props for showing a modicum of restraint. Just once.
You know what? At least it's not Orcish Bowmaster.
Yeah, it's not Orcish Bowmaster. That's
I
true.
mean, but this is every draw.
it's
yeah.
their draw step. When you have it with Orcish Bowmaster, though, baby.
Orcish Bowmasters, at least, I mean, egregious card, but at least is like, hey, it sucks when I'm playing against blue players. And like there's a, you know, mucking somebody's brainstorm or whatever feels like justice. This just says, oh, you were playing Magic the Gathering? Oh, my bad. Take damage.
Yeah.
I hate that. Let me draw my goddamn cards, wizards. Please. I'm taking game action still.
You need cards to keep Magic honest.
This is not that. What I'm doing is honest. I'm the good guy. I'm casting Brain Surge.
Ironically, this guy is also like casting Copper Tablet. Like he just loves that card.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Only this is also gives you a 2/2 first striker.
I mean, I can't speak. I just brought up Zozu the Punisher like 30 seconds ago. So, you know.
This card is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This card's a lot of good. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just kill it.
In your upkeep.
Or just play it. Yeah.
Yeah. Upkeep's fine. Their turn's okay. Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Screaming Nemesis. This is a 3-mana 3/3 spirit for 2 and a red. It has haste, and whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. I actually love this.
It's weird because the previous card also somehow reminds me of the other card with that text on it, the 2/2 from Shadowmoor.
Stigma Lasher.
Yeah, the Razorkin
Oh.
Needlehead also reminds me of Stigma Lash.
Sure, a little bit, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this has got big Boros Reckoner vibes.
Yes, of course.
On it, right? I don't know if we're playing this into Blasphemous Act in 2024 like we used to with the Boros Reckoner.
I mean,
I'm just going to play this and turn it sideways.
I know.
Yeah.
It's got all right, it's got Ancient 2 mana. It's got haste. It's a 3-mana 3/3 with nothing but upside. It is a very good card. Basically, in every deck that is playing red or is splashing red, you could probably include it. Here's a list. Medium red, big red, Gruul monsters. I'm going to be playing it in equipment decks. You can probably play it in... would you play it in Jeskai is a question.
No, I'd consider playing it maybe as like the single 3-drop or one of a couple 3-drops in actual red deck wins.
Yeah. God, like they just can't ever block it. If they don't have Path or Swords or an Exile effect
Well, they better block it.
or destroy... Well, wait.
Because you're dying.
Whenever... If a player's dealt damage this way. No. I mean,
it's only if it hits them with combat damage, they don't. They can.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, they
No,
can
you
still
boys
gain
are overthinking what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying
you'd
they're
have to
just
simply
dying
kill them.
because
Yeah,
you're
no,
a red
no,
deck
no.
attacking them with
So,
the 3/3.
Look, we're Magic players. We have to scrutinize every word and see what the other potential meaning could be.
I do like that this card kind of brings back the love for Flame Slash a little bit, right? Because like, don't the Reckoners, like, don't the other creatures with this triggered ability care about the controller, like who targeted it with
No.
damage? No, they don't. Okay, am I
As
just
the
imagining
premier
that?
stuffy doll pilot
Stuffy
of
Doll
They don't
the
care.
format.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
And
also
also-
blast it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, Brash Taunter, Stuffy Doll, Boros Reckoner. And now this, is that correct?
There's
No,
also
there's
the Goblin. There's a few more.
Mog
There's
Maniac,
Spite
Spite Mare,
Oh,
There's
okay,
a few.
okay,
There's
okay.
maybe one more in
Job
there.
Pig,
Job pig.
Job Pig,
All right,
Pig's got a job.
take us home, Wheeler. Last red card. Let's go.
Job Pig. Turn inside out. One
Gross.
red.
Sorry, I said gross. The art.
Job Pig. One red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. When it dies this turn, manifest dread. You had me at +3/+0.
I like when it dies, not if it dies.
Yeah, it. I mean,
We didn't pump its toughness.
It
so
knows
it's
what's
dying.
happening here, right? Yeah.
Hey,
I-
Razorkin Needle has first strike on your turn.
I like pump spells. I like targeting my creatures and making them big and killing my opponent. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. And sometimes you're like, man, I really wish I could trade with my opponent's creature while also fueling my Grim Lavamancer. And this is kind of a nice little role player to include. Yeah, that's it. It's
Hey,
just, it has 3 on it, and it's a pump spell.
So it costs
For
1. It has the number 3 in it. If you're targeting your own Valiant 1-drop mouse with this while watching this podcast and playing a game of Arena, let us know in the comments.
Oh, this card's going to make standard real bad, actually. Hold on.
yeah.
2 mana?
All the Valiant.
You take
yeah.
all of the damage?
What is it time that we play Pump Spell Fling Fireblade Charger deck?
That
Highlighter?
3 mana like backup fling creature is just a cool magic card.
Yeah, the Voldaren Bloodseeker or whatever.
Like
Yeah.
that's just a cool card. Let's move on to green. It's time to talk about Formless Genesis from the Commander set. 2 and a green for a kindred sorcery with Shapeshifter. Changeling. This sorcery is every creature type. Create an XX colorless Shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard, and it has Retrace. So, interesting card here. Obviously, like, not the most game-breaking thing to do if you've just milled yourself, like, with some combo that does that. But if you're in one of these, like, enchantment land decks that just, like, do a lot of stuff, like they take a lot of game actions and they like tutor a bit and draw cards a bunch and they cycle stuff in out of their hand and they cast Life from the Loam, but then they mill themselves a bunch. Like, it's 3 mana for like, maybe a 5/5 or something, and it has Retrace, so you can cast it after Wraths or whatever, which that deck still sometimes play. There's a bunch of versions of
That's funny.
Channel
You're thinking
land
of this
combos.
as Worm Harvest.
Yeah, well, Worm Harvest
Oh.
makes a lot of bodies.
Yeah,
but
this
this
makes
is a
one
little
big
cheaper, and it
body.
makes a big thing with Death Touch.
See, I like this with Goyfs.
Okay.
Because Kindred is one of the creature types, or card types, pardon me, that fuels Goyfs. You don't very often hit,
Right.
like, at all. So it
Yeah,
just makes
there's
them all
Bitter
bigger.
Blossoms, not
But
really
but
up to snuff
2
anymore.
with the new, is it Barrow-Goyf?
Barrow-Goyf, Pyrogoyf.
Well, no. The one that specifically cares whenever another Lurgoyf enters play.
Pyrogoyf.
That's Pyrogoyf.
That's Pyrogoyf. I mean, it enters play as a Lurgoyf because it's changeling.
Yep.
So it both fuels the Pyrogoyf and synergizes with the Pyrogoyf. I don't know. I like this in 3-color 5-Goyf.
Sure. The Jund Goyfs. Yeah.
Jund Goyfs. I don't
The
know.
regular Jund, just like, good stuff Jund decks is playing all of those Goyfs
Yeah.
these days. Like, it's got 4 Goyfs because it's got the 1-drop, both the heavy-hitting red and black ones, and then it just plays a original Goyf because it's so good with Pyrogoyf. So maybe throw this in there as well.
Good with your Magnivore.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Like, I wanted to talk about this card because I think it's so interesting. I'm not immediately saying like this is going to
Sure.
be a staple.
Yeah.
Damn.
All right, Wheeler has nothing to add.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All
Serge.
right. Next up, we have the Hauntwood Shrieker. This is a 3-mana 3/3 beast mutant for 1 green. Whenever it attacks, manifest dread. So take 2 cards, pick the one that you want to turn into a 2/2, put the other one into your graveyard, and then activated ability 1 and a green. Reveal target face down permanent. If it's a creature, you may turn it face up. This is exciting. So we have an on-curve green creature, a 3-mana 3/3, that fuels your graveyard, makes more bodies when it attacks, and if you're hitting creatures, has the ability to flip it face up. This does let you, this is extremely niche. You could do some weird Stifle Knot shenanigans with this. I don't think you're trying to play this for that reason, but it's kind of cute.
Yeah, I just think this is like a natural order that is a 3/3 for 3.
Natural order.
Well, because you can just get your Titan face down, right?
Yeah,
and
you
flip
can.
it
You
for
can
2.
you can high roll.
Yeah, you can high roll.
I'm pretty high on this card, and I've talked to other Canlander players, and they were less high on this card.
So the downside for this is it doesn't do anything when it comes into play.
Yeah, it's a 3-mana 3/3.
It's just a 3-mana 3/3. You have to go through a turn cycle, and it has to attack. At that point, you're off to the races.
But if it attacks, you win the game. It's
If
the
it
way that I
attacks-
look at this
Yes, yeah. So that is the entire analysis of this card. It
Yeah.
has unbelievably high upside, and its
Well-
downside is it's a 3-mana 3/3, which isn't that bad of a downside, honestly.
For cards like this that can be easily overlooked as well because they don't feature some kind of protection or some kind of
Any
ETB.
keyword.
I think it's interesting. This is something, my most controversial take is that I think looking at the rarity is also like totally
They made it a
fine.
mythic.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like I look at this card and I'm like, why is this? And the same with the Screaming Nemesis. It's like, why are these 3-drops mythics?
Right.
It's like,
3/3 for 3.
because this thing is just like a menace when Llanowar Elves comes out, right?
Right.
Like it's just,
Yeah, turn 2.
this
you're like,
thing is
uh-oh.
unbelievable, right?
Sure.
When it starts attacking and doing things. And if you can clear the board or protect it, it can just like run away with the game. And, you know, a lot of people think about this coming out of the gates very quickly, but think about how many games of Highlander also just come down to like, we're top decking and trying to
Yep.
find something because we've had this huge war of attrition.
pretty good top
And this hits the table.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh. Like,
So-
well,
Let's go back in time again. I love these adventures into the history of the format. Early hoof decks were playing a 4-mana threat that every turn would manifest a creature.
5 mana, but
5
yeah.
mana.
5 mana. Yeah, and just that sort of card advantage that it generates as well.
Yeah, Whisperwood.
Elemental.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, that card kind of unassuming, but gets out of hand very quickly. And this has even more upside.
And you actually manifest a little faster on curve here, you know, even though it has to wait a turn to attack because it's 2 mana later to get to Whisperwood.
God, this off of one of the hierarchs, though, attacking as a 4/4 on turn 3. Ooh.
This is the kind of card that you look at and you're like, I just diced a bolt. And then you realize how many games you lose because you don't have the bolt or the fatal push
Yep.
or the whatever to their like 3
Oh,
drop.
man, cut down is so sad right now.
Yeah.
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 All right, next card, Wheeler.
Insidious Fungus. 1 green for a 1/2 creature fungus with pay 2 generic, sacrifice Insidious Fungus, choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand into play tapped. This card has a lot of similarities to something like Outland Liberator or Haywire Might.
Gonna say Haywire Might
In
for
that,
sure, yeah.
you know, it's a cheap-ish green creature that can blow up artifacts or enchantments. Whereas Haywire Might can be found off like Urza Saga, Insidious Fungus can be found off Green Sun Zenith. And that's kind of a neat little trade. Like, I don't think there's, I think that there's enough difference between these abilities where you can't say that one is strictly better than another, not just because that's not really how card evaluation works all the time. But because which copy you include may change depending on what type of deck you are playing. If you want an additional copy of like enchantment and artifact disruption, and like, you know, Outland Liberator is another one that I mentioned where that card also provides additional artifact enchantment disruption, but that is also just a threat. Like, that is a actual body. A 1/2 is not that exciting of a body. So I like this card. I don't think it's an everyday food, but if your metagame does have, you know, more Academy decks than you would like to be playing
Oh
against.
God, every deck has Urza Saga these days, right? Like,
Yeah, like there will always be something to kill with this card nowadays. It's just whether or not you want to play this particular one over Haywire Might, or over even Outland Liberator, or addition to those cards, right? It's just another nice little card to have in the Canlander toolbox of green hateful creatures.
I think if you're on Luris or Recurring Nightmare, there's something to be said for like being excited that this can just provide you additional gas. Like, you can just put more mana into it to draw cards if you have like a board parity.
Yeah. Killing Karnstrucks is also pretty nice.
Yeah, or the saga itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're up.
Okay, I want to tell you about. this
Time
tall,
to scrutinize.
That's right. This tall creature we're going to talk about. It's Patchwork Beastie. 1 green for a 3/3 artifact creature beast with Delirium. Patchwork Beastie can't attack or block unless there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill a card. Very adorable
It
art.
doesn't know it isn't real.
That's
It's
right.
just a little guy.
Incredible flavor text, incredible art. Didn't get the illusion card type. It's just a beast. But yeah, this is a neat one. It reminds me a bit of that Eldritch Moon or Shadows of Innistrad fungus. There was like a mold
Death
creature.
Bonnet Sprout?
Yeah, Death Bonnet Sprout that also mills you in your upkeep, and then once you have Delirium, it becomes a 3/3.
No, that one requires 3. Oh, sorry. You're thinking of Gnarlwood Dryad.
Gnarlwood Dryad.
That's the Delirium
Okay.
becomes a 3/3, and it's always a 1/1 Death Toucher.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, might be one of those two.
That's okay.
Anyways, one drops, so it's not just can't block, can't attack either. So it really does just mill you a card if you're not on Delirium, but it itself is an artifact and a creature, so helps with those Delirium strategies. Yeah,
I've seen Jund Delirium show up a couple of times in not locally, but in other Canlander communities or the online community. That looks pretty interesting. Jund and Abzan Delirium, where they tend to go a bit higher than this kind of card, but they do play this kind of card.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if with enough density, you can kind of compact that list to being like a Jund Delirium aggressive kind of deck that gets to play your Patchwork Beastie, your Gnarlwood Dryad, your Dragon's Rage Channeler, maybe you're like a Death Shadow deck too or something.
Right.
You know, you can get a little spicy. Like Upkeep Millicard is pretty good.
Yeah.
yeah, it's relevant.
Yeah.
I really like that the card furthers your Delirium goals
Yep.
by being alive or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a card that if it's in your deck and you have Delirium, then it's a 1-mana 3/3 that's going to further fuel your graveyard and, you know, do other synergy things. But if it is the card that gets milled or discarded, then it is contributing to Delirium for 2 card types. And it's not the only one that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
Like there's another one coming up. So
The
it's
Surveil lands.
interesting to keep an eye on.
The Surveil lands have just made the strategy so much more easily achievable earlier as well.
Yeah.
It's real. Dear listener, it's real. Next up, Ursine Monstrosity. This is also from the Commander set. It's a 3-mana 3/3 bear mutant for 2 and a green. Has trample, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, mill a card and choose an opponent at random. In our format, that's your opponent. Ursine Monstrosity attacks that player this combat if able, until end of turn. Ursine Monstrosity gains indestructible and gets +1/+1 for each card amongst cards in your graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ancient 2 mana. This is a pretty fantastic threat in green-red monsters, anything that has an elf coming down on turn 2. There is a little bit of downside of it, has to attack each combat if able, but it kind of swings like a truck. And that's big. Mill a card. If you cast it and you had a Surveil land or off a fetch land, there's a very real chance that this is swinging for like 6 on turn 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go like
absolutely.
fetch land elf into this on turn 2, and then turn 3. If you cast anything and mill a card, it's big, it's fast. It's got one job. It doesn't offer a lot of flexibility.
Yeah. It's a weird card. Having to attack isn't a downside that we see on cards that I would recommend very often.
Whoa. The Juggernaut. Is,
Right,
sorry,
exactly.
hold on.
We do include Juggernaut in BattleBots for memes still, even this year. But
Well, if you're on Mishra's work.
if you're on
If you're on the workshop
if
version,
you're on
you're
workshop,
absolutely playing OG Juggernaut. Do we all own like old school black border Juggernauts?
my first Juggernaut I got was revised, so I still have that.
still have that one?
I just
I
played
only
the
have a
revised one.
beta one.
I only have a beta one.
That's fine. Good for you.
It's not alpha.
I
But
bet I played.
it does well enough.
I bet I played Juggernaut before you guys played Magic.
Yeah, probably did, old man.
It's true, yeah. But I just like this card in a world where we're fighting over the initiative a lot. Has trample and indestructible. Like, it doesn't have indestructible all the time, but it has indestructible during combat.
When it matters.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a relevant piece in the scrappy creature decks.
It might be the best gnarled mass I've ever seen.
Mm.
Like,
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah, as far as just vanilla 3/3s that are going to hit your opponent.
I mean,
yeah.
it kind of gives me Terravor vibes. I'm going to be honest.
Like, this
Right?
card, that's a good point, honestly,
Yeah.
Wheeler. Like, this card is 2024 vanilla.
yeah.
yeah.
It's got this one regular ability and this one complicated
Yeah, I
ability.
guess it just.
And that's the minimum now.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to cast.
I like that it mills a card.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're always getting at least +1/+1.
Yeah. It's always attacking for 4.
Yeah.
Indestructible trample.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and you know what? I'm behind this. But I'm a sucker for like Predator Ooze kind of cards. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, this
yeah.
is trample.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wheeler, take us home with green.
Hey, it's our first room
Oh
card.
my God, we're talking about a room.
It
What are rooms?
Oh, no.
James.
That has hilariously covered you. Oh, I love this.
Well, from our
Nice.
perspective, I can't even read. Actually, you know
From
what?
the viewer's perspective, you are walk-in closet now.
Hooray! Tell us what walk-in closet
James,
does,
James, I got out of that closet years ago.
Look,
Thank you very much.
I don't make the overlays. I just click on the cards. And
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
walk-in closet is a 2 mana and a green enchantment that says you may play lands from your graveyard.
That's the important part.
Yes, it's
Oh,
a
nice.
Crucible.
Okay.
And then the second part is Forgotten Cellar. 3 green for also an enchantment that says when you unlock this door, you may cast spells from your graveyard this turn, and if a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile it instead. To run down how rooms work, because we kind of got trampled over it by James and his comedic splitting of the card here, is that you can cast either side of this room. So I could pay 5 mana up front and get Forgotten Cellar. I could pay 3 mana up front and get Walk-in Closet. When it comes into play, it's just that side. That is an unlocked door. The other side is locked, which means that at any time that you could cast a sorcery, you could pay its mana cost to unlock that door, and you get an effect. So you can play, like the play pattern for a lot of these cards is play the cheaper one, and then when you get to a point in the game where you have the mana or you want, to do a big splashy thing, you then unlock the other side and then pop off. But if you have a bunch of mana already and you don't want the Walk-in Closet, you could already play the Forgotten Cellar. What I'm trying to say is it's a Crucible of Worlds.
Yep.
That's an enchantment
Yep.
that works with our crabs and our enchantment self-mill. So now we have an enchantment Crucible.
I mean, that's just kind of hot
It
regardless.
feels weird that because we keep getting more crucibles. There's
they're
a
all
ton of crucibles.
creatures.
They've all and artifacts.
Well, they're
right?
artifacts and creatures.
There's
Right.
like
The first one's an artifact, but the more recent ones have been artifacts or creatures or
Yeah.
artifact creatures, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is exciting.
Yeah.
Congrats, Crucible enjoyers. Now you have an enchantment.
Jacob Aro
Crucible.
is so happy.
Yeah, Jacob's
That
gonna be so
idyllic
amped with
tutor?
this song or this card.
Yep.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, great.
Start us off with the gold cards.
It's time to talk about Flood Farm Verge.
That's a land.
That's a land. It sounds like a land.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Flood Farm Verge later. Or now. What are we doing, team?
I would
This was the top card of the gold.
Let's just go down the whole
Column.
thing in order. Welcome to Gold and Lands together at last.
Great. Okay, so this card's probably here because we want to point out this entire cycle.
Yes.
Because the rest of the cycle's not here, but there are 5 of these.
Yes.
This is a new kind of land. It looks a lot like a Future Sight card called Nimbus Maze.
Yep.
It's very similar to Nimbus Maze, but actually, it's better.
Yeah.
So it comes into play untapped, taps for a white, and it can tap for a blue only if you control a plains or an island. So Nimbus Maze would have said tap for a blue only if you control a plains, and tap for a white only if you control an island. And maybe Nimbus Maze also lets you tap for a colorless?
I believe it lets you tap for a colorless.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Nimbus Maze taps for a colorless.
Which is relevant
It's
with,
super relevant.
with the Eldrazi symbol, the colorless
Since Oath
symbol.
of the Gatewatch is even more relevant than it was before, although even beforehand maybe it was occasionally relevant.
So Nimbus
yeah.
Maze was one-off too. It wasn't a cycle. Isn't that correct?
That's
There's,
right,
There's
yeah.
a couple of weirdo
The
lands like that.
Horizon Canopy was the first one from
Yeah.
before Modern Horizons came out, and they
Yeah.
started filling that out. And there's River of Tears still have never been.
River of Tears was
River of
also-
Tears, Grove of the
River
Burnwillows.
Grove the Burnwillows.
River
Yeah.
of Tears was such a pain because of the sequencing of it. It
Yeah.
like tapped for blue unless you played a land, in which case it tapped for black. And if you didn't sequence wrong, you could screw yourself or whatever.
Serge, that's a great segue into a thing that I want to point out about those lands, which is why I have my phone out. I'm
Yeah.
not just being rude or looking at memes.
Go for it.
So the cycle of lands, they all tap for one color guaranteed.
Sure.
And then the other color if you meet the requirement.
Sure.
So this, in case, always taps for white, right? But adds blue if you have a plains or an island. An easy thing to hit, except for on, say, turn 1. Or with certain kind of developments of your mana base that might involve like fast lands
Sure.
that you want to play out earlier so that they come into play untapped, which can be a little awkward. So just for context for the listener as well, the black-red one adds a black and then will add a red if the requirements are met. Obviously, this is white and then add blue. There is add a blue and then add black if the requirements are met. Add a green, add white if the requirements are met, and then add red, add green if the requirements are met.
So,
So-
5?
There's 5 of them, all allied colored.
Yep.
And the point I want to make is that this becomes very relevant when you look at ones like the red-green land, where you want green on turn 1 for your mana dork, but you do not get access to that. You might want to have blue mana on turn 1 to cast your Ponder or Preordain to set up your next couple of turns. You don't have access to that. You want to play hand attack in your blue-black deck. You know, it can be a little awkward. And you need to be extra careful about your sequencing when you use these. But I do think they're very good.
Yeah, they're definitely very good.
Yeah.
Pretty close to check lands as well as pretty close to Nimbus Maze.
Mm-hmm.
And check lands we haven't seen very often in recent years. I still occasionally run into a Dragon Skull Summit.
They show up in
sometimes.
2-color decks
Yeah.
and 3-color blue decks typically, especially if they are a bit more mid-range or controlling.
But yeah, similar, a little better most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I like these lands.
Yeah, no, I think these are something to be aware of, and yeah, definitely include them if you feel like it.
Great.
Next up, Gremlin Tamer. This is a 2-mana 2/2 human scout for a white and a blue. Has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token.
Constellation make a 1/1.
Constellation, make a
I mean,
yeah.
I
Young Peasy for Constellation. What do you think? Do you care?
No, this is my own personal bias. This is just not the payoff that I want in an Enchantress deck.
Mm-hmm.
I want to draw a card or I want to make something bigger. It's just the way that I play Enchantress decks, even it's like the Sanctum Stompy version, never wants to go wide. And maybe that's wrong and maybe that's bad. But so we're green-white deck. We're splashing blue now for the new blue Enchantress and maybe for the whatever the 2/1 2-mana 1/1 was. That
the stalking card?
Yeah, the unblockable.
creeping hall.
We just talked about in the last
Friend?
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I look at Gremlin Tamer, and it's neither. So, I mean, this is a great example of synergy cards in decks, right? Where you want it to be either an enchantment, in which case it synergizes with the cards that are already doing stuff, or have a very high upside. And this is lowering your enchantment density. And I don't know if the payoff is worth it, because you need a really important balance of both payoff and payload. So I look at this and I think of this as a trap. I don't think I would play this over other ones.
It draws the game with Enchanted Evening.
Nice.
And there's actually another card that we didn't talk about in this set because it's not very good, but it's a room in mono white that also makes everything an enchantment in addition to its other types.
Okay, like another.
So there are
Enchanted
multiple ways to go infinite with this card, but
Hilarious.
they're not great.
Now, we're talking about drawing the game. That's if no one else can take any game actions, but you can set up loops and then win a game if you have just a way to sacrifice the Gremlin Tamer.
Yeah.
And then make it like all these 1/1s and win that
Oh,
way.
you lose because every time an enchantment comes into play, the triggers, you never get a chance
Well,
to
it's not
stop.
it's
Yeah.
an uncontrolled loops draw the game. It's not a loss.
Sorry,
It's
sorry.
a draw, which is
That's-
relevant for
And we
tournament
take
players.
those.
Yeah, absolutely. No, including a way to draw the game is,
tried and true strategy.
Well, I don't want to say that, but it won't be, you won't be the first person who's done it.
It is
you know?
it's like when I played World Gorger combo,
Sure.
I remember going to a finals where I was like down a game and just about to lose, and I could draw the game with World Gorger Dragon Animate Dead, and it was like, we draw. We gotta go to the next one. And I won the next 2 games.
Yep.
Sick.
It pops up.
Mono red does it sometimes too, especially like if during the meta, like Volcanic Followed is particularly good, or you're playing the
Psy Blast for the draw?
Yeah, Psy Blast, Chars. Like sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
You know.
Char you, I like it.
The only other thing I want to talk about this card is with sorry, I can't remember the name of the Unburial Rites where you flashback is sacrifice 3 creatures.
Dread Return.
Yeah, like Dread Return. I wonder if there's a version of the enchantment lands combos that includes, Sabine's Reclamation and Dread Return, and like this is a way to kind of turn it on. I just feel like this might be a neat card. That those decks, like Jacob's deck, is already so lost in the sauce. Like the sauce is so thick that I would be unsurprised to see like Jacob Varro specifically, or anyone trying those kind of decks, include this. And then it's like, you play it, it makes a 1/1, you draw a card, and then it dies. And then later it's like, oh, okay, I've milled 40 cards now, and I can do this and that, and then this leads to the,
It is something. It is at least worth mentioning when you have a 2-mana card that does something that is basically just like a unique effect that can go infinite.
Right.
Like, and can provide a way for those decks to kill people. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I'm saying that like it is something definitely worth considering.
Forget Squirrel Nest Earthcraft combo.
Oh God, no!
This is your
I wouldn't say forget it. I mean, I'm not even on that. I'm meticulous archiving.
I know. Oh,
like this card probably
excavating.
not as terrifying as Witherbloom Apprentice off of the preview article, but like does kind of remind you of Witherbloom Apprentice a little bit the way we're talking about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Wheeler.
Oh, wait, before we go, shout out Gremlins, the movie. That's clearly what's going on here in the reference, right? It's a little cute thing, but then they got out of control.
Oh, are there
Actual
references in this set?
Gremlins.
Are there references in this set?
Geez, I don't know.
Anyways, Kaido, Bane of Nightmares. This is our Planeswalker for the set. Or is it? 2 blue and a black for a legendary Planeswalker. Well, there you go. Kaido with 4 starting loyalty and ninjutsu for 1 blue and a black. You can return an unblocked attacking creature you control to your hand and put this into play from your hand tapped and attacking. How is a Planeswalker attacking? Well, during your turn, as long as Kaido has 1 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. Then has the following loyalty abilities. +1, you get an emblem with ninjas you control, get +1/+1. 0, surveil 2, then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn. -2, tap target creature, put 2 stun counters on it. So aside from these abilities reading like an intro deck Planeswalker, I really like this card. I am high on this card, mostly because it's an uncounterable Planeswalker. Uncounterable Planeswalker that presumably it hits them. Like you could surveil 2 and then get to do a thing, but there are a couple of play patterns here. So if your creature is unblocked, that may lead you to believe that your opponent doesn't have a creature, right? Your creature's not blocked because they don't have a creature. Thus, you can safely put this into play and surveil 2. And then you can be comfortable with a 4 loyalty Planeswalker that has returned one of your Icefang Coatl, your Baleful Strix, whatever, and drawn you a card. Or you tick it up to get an emblem. And now you have a 5 loyalty Planeswalker that can survive some amount of attacks. But if you're worried about that and you really want to lock something down, tapping something and putting 2 stun counters is just like, that card is not a game piece for a while.
That ability is like often going to be more powerful than killing it or returning it to its hand or to their owner's hand.
Not to mention, you could just stack them up if you really want to. Like you can -2, then +1, and then -2 again, and just keep it kind of locked forever. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this card.
I want to call it Kaido the Mind Sculptor because it's got so many abilities, and also because I think this card is particularly exciting to boomer players. I don't know. It just seems like this is a card that's like doing things that Planeswalkers haven't really done much before. Like Gideon turned into a creature all the time.
Yeah.
But like, this is like sort of new ground for Planeswalker Ninjutsu. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
don't know.
definitely new, yeah.
I'm looking forward to games with this card just because I have a tough time evaluating how good this is, but it seems quite good.
Yeah, I think I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just disappointed now because I thought about bringing this for a Showdown episode, and Wheeler talked me out of it.
Oh no, it was the jealousy.
This could have gone in the blue-black tempo list.
This is making me seem like a bad guy as opposed to somebody giving maybe a production note about what we should bring.
Are you doing Trump hands right now?
No, if I'm doing Trump hands, they're like tighter in here.
Holy crap. Let's move on.
What are the best ninjas?
Nelly,
This
you're
is my
up.
turn. Sorry.
Nelly, save us.
More legendary Kamigawa people because we love Daniel. Nashi, Searcher in the Dark, blue-black for a 2/2 legendary rat ninja wizard with menace, and whenever Nashi, Searcher in the Dark, deals combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. You may put any number of legendary and or enchantment cards from among them into your hand. If you put no cards in your hand this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Nashi. Cheap legendary creatures. You know, it's like they're always a little bit juiced because legendary is a downside, so you tend to get a bit more value for your mana than you're supposed to. Example, Monkey, Tameo, etc. But then also, when they Caracas your thing, you're not as mad. Like, it's 2 mana, but it's only 2 mana. And you probably already drew some cards off of this. If you just made it a 5/5 and then they Caracased it, okay, sure. Now it's not a 5/5 anymore. But that means you hit them for like 12. Yeah, 2 mana, 2/2 menace with upside.
Caracas will remain unpointed until you clowns put Pithing Needle in your Urza Saga decks.
It's been coming up.
It's pretty good.
The thing, Pithing Needle, I think this year has been played more than any other year I can remember. Like
Maybe
from
like
lists.
2010 blue-green.
Oh,
where it's
yeah,
a sick
sure.
Trinket Mage target.
Like when it was new and Trinket Mage was still kind of hot.
Got to
Yeah.
name that grindstone.
Hell yeah. No, but I like this. I think it's solid. I don't know. Yeah, it goes in tempo. Possibly like just like Grixis good stuff. Grixis 2-for-1s could maybe play this. The trigger of putting legendary or enchantment cards, I'm not sure exactly who's best set up to take advantage of that. I think more often you're just going to be kind of milling yourself because that's nice.
Fuel your Dell.
And then
yeah.
making it into a 3/3 and like
think
you're mostly going to get counters.
I think it's a pretty good card that doesn't really have a good home. Like
I played a Sultai +1/+1 counters deck recently.
hitting a like a channel land from Kamigawa is nice, or hitting your obviously your Shieldred.
Your own Caracas.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you're like a particularly aggressive version of like a blue-black, like Flying Men-ish kind of thing, then maybe, but
I think we're overthinking it, and this could just be solid in Reanimator.
no.
You don't like it?
No way.
No?
It just
It's like a plan B. 'cause
Yeah, but
you
it
just, like,
died.
can hit
No,
them
your plan
instead.
B is Psychic Frog.
All right. It does cost the same as Psychic
Oh,
Frog.
yeah.
That's the problem I'm looking at this.
That's
the whole
fair.
time I'm being like, why wouldn't I just play Psychic Frog?
It's Psychic Frog. It's Psychic Frog if Psychic Frog was in standard.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this draws me cards. Psychic Frog draws me cards.
That's
Like,
true.
oh, it's got evasion. Psychic Frog has better evasion. It's like, this is legendary. It's like Psychic Frog doesn't
this-
get bounced to Caracas, right?
Is this
Like,
2024's John Finkel? Just same
Oh
mana
my God,
cards
yes.
from the next
Yeah,
set.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's not the same
yeah,
set, but you know.
all right. Next up, we have another room card where we're going to get James to read the front side. It's Roaring Furnace / Steaming Sauna.
I like this view better. I don't have to look at Wheeler. Roaring Furnace is a 1 mana and red pip enchantment. When you unlock this door, this room deals damage equal to the number of cards in your hand to target creature an opponent controls.
Okay.
And then the other side is Steaming Sauna. 5 mana, but 3 and blue. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card. Hey, it's the Monarchy, except they can never take it from you. That's kind of exciting. So 2 mana, deal... What do you think the EV on that is? 4?
3.
3, 4?
3 to 5.
3 to 5?
Because this is one of the cards that was in your hand and isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, on turn 2. I think the only reason you're playing this is you like the flexibility. Actually, no. I think Blue Moon, maybe a bit of a slower Blue Moon, likes this. It's a removal spell. On the other side, it's card draw every turn.
It's an enchantment for your Delirium.
It's enchantment for
Helps
your
your
Delirium, for your
Unholy Heat.
DRG.
Honestly, it is like a 6 damage you
DRC,
can set up
DRC.
if you need to, and in Blue Moon, it's not that hard. You're like
Pretty good with Gush.
taking one. Yeah, great with Gush. Taking one turn off playing a land maybe, so you can kill their gigantic seasoned Dungeoneer.
I mean, it gives you that flexibility that Blue Moon likes too. It's a removal spell early and later on in the game when nothing is happening. You're like, yeah, I'll just draw a card every turn.
Pitches to Force of Will.
Pitches the Force of Will and Fury.
Yeah,
Yeah, hold on. Hold on.
That sounds like we're making a joke, but in,
No,
in
actually,
a deck
yeah.
like Blue Moon, it
Yeah.
is relevant, being able to pitch to like Pyrokinesis and everything. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this card's actually kind of sick, which is, I didn't think I'd say as I was reading it all by itself, but it just offers so much flexibility specifically in that deck.
This was
Still not good enough playing Jeskai, right?
No.
Uh-oh.
Well,
I doubt it. I doubt you're going to play this in Jeskai, but sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say that I forgot walk-in closet existed, the previous room.
Oh, okay.
And this was the room that I was talking about where I'm like, yeah, I could see this card being played.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wheeler.
The Jolly Balloon Man. 1 red and a white for a 1/4 legendary human clown with haste, and pay 1 generic tap. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature token in addition to its other colors and types, and it has flying and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here, but
Yeah.
it kind of plays out like a reflection of the Mirror Breaker or a pricier Kiki Jiki. It does not go infinite, at least not easily, but it does have 4 toughness. You can use it the turn that you play it, and it's a human, which is pretty relevant for
clown.
the. Though I know it's a hey, I already human and clown is a little redundant, but yeah, it's
Especially on this show.
yes, exactly. I like this card. I'm not sure where I want to play it. I actually thought about playing this in my Boros equipment deck that has a lot of ETBs and tends to play a bit of a grindier kind of game, and making an evasive threat that I can toss a Colossus Hammer. Well, that doesn't work out the way you want it, but making an evasive threat that I can then toss a bunch of stuff on is pretty nice. But
That's funny because that's literally the home I thought of it as too. You're just like, yeah, this seems great.
I think it's good in Mardu Initiative.
oh yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mardu Initiative, it would. Be
Oh
pretty good.
yeah.
Like you can. The other thing is like any of those decks that are playing multiples of the good elemental invocations. You know, like
Yep.
the 1/1 flying also has double strike when it's Fury, or like it also has lifelink when it's Solitude.
Yep.
It also has Menace when it's Grief. You know.
Also has reach when it's endurance.
But also has Reach when it's Endurance. Activate only as sorcery. Yeah.
Also has haste if it's hostility.
This is why I say
Thanks, Wheeler.
hostility.
Also can't be blocked by 3 more creatures unless it's,
When
if
it's Guile.
yeah.
Incredible. Anyways, yeah, I like it in the decks with the ETBs, obviously, as well.
Cool.
This card is just very solid.
Yeah, it is.
It can copy your legendary creatures.
Yeah, I like that.
Just for the ETB,
Yeah,
for
just,
sure.
just to cash the ETB in on.
Comes in, dies, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's weird because it doesn't look like it'd be good, but it has so much utility.
Yeah, it's just like 4 mana heat shimmer. It's just like kind of okay at
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. It's backside of the Kiki Jiki thing that you didn't have to wait 3 turns for.
The Mirror Breaker, yeah.
Or Heat Shimmer that leaves a 1/4.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, Nelly.
Let's talk about the Swarm Weaver. Put 2 W's in a word and I'm out. Swarm Weaver. Shawarma. I'll take mine with hummus. Yeah. 2 black-green for a 2/3 legendary artifact creature Scarecrow. When the Swarm Weaver enters, create 2 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying and with Delirium, as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Insects and spiders you control get +1/+1 and have Death Touch. Whew.
I'm a little bit annoyed that we now need new black-green insect tokens.
Yeah, that's annoying.
That
now
bugs
there's
me.
black green insect bug. Get it? With
Oh.
flying. Yeah. So this is pretty hot. There's a bunch of other things that make insect tokens already running around. So you can definitely curve like the
Grist
planeswalker
into
on
this.
3 into this on 4, and like you're already milling yourself with grist.
And you're
or
playing
your other
Hornet
cards.
Queen.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe. But, I wanted to point out the cards people are already playing for Serge. But yeah, if we want to go back to 2014, I am playing Hornet Queen. No, I don't know. This it's 4 mana for a 2/3, but you get 3 bodies. It doesn't itself have reach or flying or death touch, but then eventually it's going to give the flyers a created death touch. So I don't know.
I mean, with Delirium, it's 4 mana for 6/7 worth of stats, with 2 of them having
Yeah.
Death Touch and flying.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Like, is this
assuming
card-
you hit Delirium?
Yeah, I don't know. Is it too early to say like Tendershoot Dryad Enjoyers like get on this instead? It's only 4 mana.
Well, Recurring Nightmare. Again,
Yeah,
it's one of those really
sure.
great threats that you can ETB over and over, and then if it dies... So Recurring Nightmare plays a little bit like Aristocrats in that creatures that leave a body behind are extra valuable because you don't end up in a really awkward situation where you have 2 high-value creatures that you're switching back and forth, where what happens is if you leave the body behind, you can end up with both good creatures in play by sacrificing the token the second time, or you just get, like Wheeler said, for 4 mana or 1 activation, you get a lot of power and toughness and abilities.
It's pretty good for taking the
rate.
initiative, too.
Yeah.
And protecting against the initiative.
Yeah.
I kind of like it in Jund with Broadside because you still get the 1/1s and then you sacrifice the 4-drop.
Take 6.
Yeah, you know, like
This is a very old school card.
Yes,
where
Yes,
it's
it
just
feels like
a bunch
the
of good stats.
deranged hermit, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it sort of feels
Yep.
like an old school card. Yeah.
All right, next up we have the Undead Sprinter. This is a 2 mana 2/2 zombie for a black and red with trample and haste. You may cast Undead Sprinter from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died this turn. If you do, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. So we have a very powerful creature at cost with a bunch of, just high value and interesting recursion. A zombie that synergizes with non-zombies is fascinating because often it's like if you have a zombie in play, you can bring it back or whatever, the
Gravecrawler.
Gravecrawler
Yeah, it's like the
ability
opposite
and
of
stuff like that.
Gravecrawlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about this, like the existence or the potential existence of, I can't remember Black Red.
Rakdos.
About Rakdos having a color identity with like a lot of exile cards that are getting played, a bit of card advantage, a little bit of aggro and stuff like that. And I don't know where I want to play this yet. Like, I don't know if this just goes in Jund because it has enough going on, but I like the direction it's going in. I don't know if there's a home yet.
Yeah, I wonder if this is 2024's Putrid Leech.
Where it's great.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Serge. I'm not 100% sure where the home is for this card. It might be a bunch of decks because, like, it looks like it's just sort of good enough. Like 2/2 trample and haste for 2. Like, sure, we're not immediately getting more than 2 power off of our 2-drop, which is kind of what we want these days. But like,
I mean,
the
you
recursion's very exciting.
you hit him for 2, it dies. Next turn, you kill their creature and just recast it, and it's bigger. That seems,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But nobody's playing Rakdos yet. And I don't know if there's the space at 2 in Jund for this. Like, I like this
Right.
with elves.
I mean, Rakdos pops up occasionally, but they're more mid-rangey. I don't know. I do like this card.
I wonder if it, like, I'm not saying it's gonna make it. Obviously, this is the deck that has the most contention. But in Aristocrats, you've got the ability to cast this as many times as you have the spare 2 mana
yeah.
on the turn that anything else died. Right, so you get this out, sacrifice it, triggers.
It does have the
pay
Blood
again.
Soaked Champion kind of.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and it's like a more exciting body than Bloodsoaked Champion, although not cheaper the first time.
Sure.
So, I wonder if it's good enough for that.
Like Rakdos Krats.
Yeah,
Rakdokrats. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I recently.
I could see
tried
this in
something like that.
Rakdos or like Mardu Aristocrats.
Nice.
All right, Wheeler, next up.
Wildfire Wicker. Red and a green for a 3/2 artifact creature Scarecrow with haste and delirium. Wildfire Wicker gets +1/+1 and has trample as long as there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard.
Yeah.
So this is a 2 mana 3 power haste creature that if you have delirium, it's a 2 mana 4/3 with haste.
And trample.
Minsk and Booth so proud.
Yeah.
I can feel myself getting killed by this card from Pro Tour Day 2 competitor Noel Robin.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
Killing me dead. This, yeah, I foresee this card showing up probably in the more aggressive versions of Gruul.
Sure.
Like not necessarily Gruul monsters, maybe the Gruul Blitz kind of decks. Where you will have more delirium as well, like the decks that play more pump spells and will play the Baubles and Dragon's Rage Channeler or whatever. But yeah, 2 mana 3 power haste that can become 4 with trample. Like that's. I want to show this to a Magic player from a Victorian Magic player from 2005, and then catch them as they faint.
Yeah.
Like,
I love the flavor text. Isn't fire supposed to kill those things?
yeah, it's
Get
real
me my
scary.
cycle complicate. I'm not feeling comfortable. You know,
Oh dear,
I need to recoil in my chaise lounge.
I need my fair spike feeder.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, take us home, Nelly. Last card.
It's Valgavoth's Lair, the only land we wanted to mention from this set, other than that cycle
Other
that
than
got us
Flood
earlier.
Farm,
I
That's
forgot
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that we forgot about. Sorry, I was planning to say that. Anyway, it's also an enchantment for only the second time, as far as I know. Next to Urza's Saga, we have an enchantment and land card. It also has hexproof, and it enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color, and then it taps for 1 mana of the chosen color. So, on the surface, not the most exciting card. Like, just a tap land that fixes for 1 color. We don't usually play those.
Nope.
But this is also an enchantment, and it has hexproof.
Yep.
So if you're doing shenanigans where things are becoming copies of things, or just you need to rely upon your mana, this has got hexproof. And it's an enchantment. So I'm going to say it one more time. This is an enchantment that's also
Yeah.
a land.
So you know how in Academy decks, how the artifact lands are absolutely cracked? That's the hope here.
Well,
This is a really bad one, though.
yeah,
It sucks that it comes in tapped.
Oh, it sucks for a lot of reasons.
But you have two cards total that are both an enchantment and land. So if you're playing Sarah's Sanctum, you know, probably you're going to end up playing both of them until they give you more options. And yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out is this deck we keep going back to that we're sort of theory crafting in this episode with the crabs that like care about lands and enchantments. And hey, this card hits for both.
Mhm.
That's it. It doesn't do anything else cool, but we need you to be aware that there's an enchantment land.
That's a big deal.
we should start doing the lands somewhere else.
Other than the very end.
Like
Yeah.
year-end
feels
roundup.
like we're ending at a one thump,
Yeah, it's
right?
like where it's
R&D's figured out they shouldn't print powerful lands because it's not fun.
you'd think that, but then we have Ugin's Labyrinth, Urza's Saga.
Shifting Wildwood.
Shifting-
Oh god, that
Urza's
card is
Cave.
cracked.
Cave.
Yeah, no, they keep giving us cool lands and stuff. All right, the set review portion is done.
Okay.
Let's bring it to the discussion at the end of the set. What do you think of Duskmourn? I'm going to start with Nelly.
There's some cool creatures in this set. Like, we saw those two red 2-drops just now at the end. In the first episode, we had that white 2-drop that gets counters if it can survive, and then the blue unblockable creature.
Yep.
I also really like that green 3/3 bear from the
Yeah.
Commander set. So there's a bunch of, like, cool new sort of aggro options for creatures. Yeah, but not a ton of cards. It's not like the splashiest going to affect your Highlander games kind of set. It's not. It's no Modern Horizons 3, of course.
All right, I'm going to jump in again before Wheeler because I know Wheeler's got more to say.
Sure.
Support for Enchantress. Really happy to see that. That's it. Just because you didn't hit that particular point.
I saved it for you, bud.
That's my exciting little checkbox. Second Crucible and Enchantment is huge. I'm excited to brew more Enchantress decks. More this weird, like actually theory crafting, like a lands Enchantress control deck. Look for it in an episode of North 100 Showdown coming medium soon. Wheeler.
I'm only going to talk about this through mechanical terms.
All right.
I think that as far as the words printed on the cards, this is a very interesting set because we have the tendency to, I guess, appease to our audience, and our audience has the tendency of wanting us to talk about 5-mana mythics that are bad.
Sure.
Or like creatures that look like they provide a lot of value.
Sure.
But in actuality, how the hell are you casting this
Right.
card?
It turns out
how
it's
are
5
you,
mana.
How like what in what world is this actually getting into play and doing the job? And this set does have a couple of those cards, right? Like I think the Abhorrent Oculus is a card that still falls into that category for me.
Gonna look good in your hand.
That said, I think this set takes that idea and then trims a mana off all those cards and gives us threats like the Swarm Weaver that we talked about, where it's just like This is just a creature that brings some extra bodies and wants you to play with different kinds of game pieces and can be incredibly threatening, right? Again, 4 mana for 6/7 stats across 3 bodies. 2 of those have flying and death touch. Like that is wild. That is a lot of value. But also, it's just kind of a dude.
Yeah.
Like,
it sort of looks like an uncommon.
and so this set has a lot of cards that I think fall into that category where they're just, it's like the Hauntwood Shrieker that manifests dread every time you attack. It's just kind of a dude.
Yeah.
It makes more dudes.
There's a Boggart Ram Gang that's just also
Crying.
a Boros Reckoner and a
Yeah.
Stigma Lasher for some reason.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So there are a lot of like bodies that aren't like the kind of cards that like you can't deal with it immediately and it snowballs or whatever.
Interesting. So we
But
don't
they
have a
do
Shield
snowball.
Dread. We don't have a Questing Beast. They're not egregious, but they are pushed.
Well,
I want to check on that.
the thing about Shieldred, and not to defend the card,
Mm.
but I think we have more cards closer to Shieldred than we do cards like Psychic Frog or a Johnny or Tameo from MH3. And that, like, realistically, Shieldred's just a 4-mana legend without an ETB,
Yep.
right? You can Caracas that, you can Swords Path it, you can bounce it, you can do whatever. Like that thing, and it still manages to see play across a variety of archetypes. And I'm not saying that necessarily the power level of the cards in this set reach Shieldred, but they do offer a similar-ish play pattern where you're just like, no, this card is just really good if it goes unchecked. And even if they do deal with it, well, I'm playing it for the situations where it isn't immediately dealt with, or maybe not dealt with so cleanly as like a Caracas or a Swords, right? I'm going to keep coming back to the Swarm Weaver because I think it's a great example of that. But this applies to other cards like the Balloon Man, or the red drop, that the Screaming Nemesis that prevents the life gain or whatever.
Sure.
Is that like, yeah, you could look at it and be like, well, it dies to bolt, or you Caracas it or whatever. And it's kind of a reductive way of thinking, but these cards are cheaper than than cards from previous sets where we may have had those criticisms. And they tend to come with an effect that will at least leave something lingering, so it's not just a straight mana loss for you, right?
Yeah, Screaming Nemesis from a previous year cost 4 at least.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this set does have that going on for it.
Yeah. So I will give props to that. And also there's just a lot of nice like cross synergies. Like again, Stoneforge can now find a cheaper removal spell, or you have a Crucible you can find with enchantment tutors. Like those little interactions are very important for our format.
You can find a land off for an enchantment tutor.
Yes. Urza's Saga.
Hexproof instant that is also an enchantment.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a bunch of cool stuff like that. And so I think that honestly, Duskmourn is a pretty interesting set to look at. It's not the most powerful, especially at the heels of Modern Horizons 3, but I do think the cards make me think more than Bloomburrow cards. Bloomburrow had some cards where I'm like, I'm excited to play with this. Duskmourn has cards where I'm like, I'm excited to play with this, but also I'm excited for my opponent to like try to navigate playing against this.
So there were 2 cards we didn't even talk about in the set.
More
One
than 2 even. Yeah.
Oh, yes. One in blue, there's the 1-mana 3/3 that has an untap ability. And in a world of Agassiz Soul Cauldron, you have an untap ability you can exile under something like that. That seems very exciting. You're
Right.
both looking at me like I'm like you don't know this one.
No, I'm trying to remember the card.
You're not talking about the card from
it's a-
Wilds of Eldraine, are you?
No, it's a
Fairy?
1-mana 3/3 flyer that enters with 2 stun counters on it. And then it has 1 in a blue to untap the creature.
That is from Wilds of Eldraine.
What?
That's Sleep Cursed Fairy.
Sleep Cursed Fae.
Was
right?
it not in this? Did I
No.
make that up?
Yeah. Well, that's from a year ago.
It's
Serge.
just relevant. I mean,
Why did I think that was in this set?
James has been dead for 15
All right, then what
years.
about the artifact? Never mind. Okay, well, my point is...
Are you okay?
Apparently not. Did I just like dream up this card? I thought there was an untapped blue one, and that was just in a different
I
set.
mean, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I think I did see kind of a weirdo card that can do that.
Agatha's Soul Cauldron works with a bunch of cards from this.
Oh,
set.
yeah.
Which is also from a year ago.
But
Yeah,
but
thank
you've
you.
seen Agatha's Soul Cauldron
All
on
right,
Twitter
well,
a
never
bunch.
mind. I was going to follow on your point of things to think about. I mean, this is a set that's got me brewing just because it does have so many weirdo cards. I mean, that's kind of every set in some way, but never like, oh, is there a new deck that's opened up? Not like, oh, I can't wait to put this into an existing archetype, right?
Right.
Yeah, the play patterns are interesting with these cards, which I don't know how interesting the play pattern of losing to a Johnny Nakatl Pariah is. But like, I don't know, if my opponent plays the Swarm Weaver, I think I'm just obsessed with the Swarm Weaver.
Sure.
Yeah,
When they play the Swarm Weaver, I'm like, oh my!
I just want to build a recurring nightmare again. Thanks.
Wheeler Leaves podcast, just can't wait to play with and against the Swarm Weaver. Goes into Magic Online, 15 games in a row of Razorkin Needlehead.
I mean, that is worth mentioning too. Like, we didn't skip over these cards. We talked about them, but like, Valgavoth is like now just a staple in Reanimator.
Yep.
Like that is just like,
Yep.
if you're playing Reanimator, you should be playing that card.
Yeah.
Razorkin Needlehead. If you're playing mono red, you should probably be playing this card.
I mean,
and we'll be
it's
playing
going to
it
be
for a while.
as oppressive as
Harsh Mentor, Eidolon of Great Revel.
Eidolon. When that one first came out, like every burn deck was playing Eidolon, right?
Yeah.
And many still do.
Yeah.
So, any final closing remarks?
God, I hate the aesthetic of the set, but the cards are pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
If you're tired of talking about Magic, play Magic.
Magic cards should not have shoes like this.
But you get that gremlin on the pillow.
With the great,
Ooh,
with the
burrito.
gremlin.
Yeah. All right.
Hernandez into Zendikar.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm there.
All right, friends. On that, we're going to call it on our set review of Duskmourn House of Horror. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Serge, joined by the wonderful Nelly.
I want a burrito.
We had a Wheeler.
Morn.
We had James on tech.
Toodaloo.
A reminder, as always, if you think we missed anything, hit us in the comments down below. Share your thoughts. Let us know. Talk to us. We like talking back to you. This set review and everything else we do is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you very much for watching and listening. We love you to bits, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.